Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program produced and funded by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Ralph Eisler.
And I'm Faithless Forrest. This is a show that promotes rational thinking rooted in scholarship and science and free of supernatural beliefs.
And this is a call-in show. However, we only have one phone line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to tweet your comments to us at FFTVKNOX. Now, while we go over a few announcements, we invite you to start calling in now at the number on the screen. Get a pen and paper, and we'll give you our email address later in the show.
All right, the Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at the West Hills Taps and Flats on Kingston Pike. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Dillahunty at Atheist Experience says, if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
Okay. Well, the Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday meetings are usually lectures and lively roundtable discussions. The book club meets on the second Sunday. We often have a reflection group that gets together for a potluck lunch on the fourth Sunday. You can visit our websites for additional details, including times and locations.
Our main topic today is the question, the desperate need to believe. But before we take this up, I guess we have some in the news, Ralph?
Yeah, we have a few pieces of news here. What you can see behind us on the screen is a picture of Noah's Ark, a genuine reproduction up there in Kentucky.
Noah's Ark or Ken's Ark?
Ken's Ark, built by Ken Ham from the Answers in Genesis Foundation. Well, the question came up last week, is the Ark underwater? What we're talking about is that earlier last week it was reported that Williamsburg, Kentucky officials decided to charge the Ark Encounter theme park 50 cents safety fee for each ticket sold. This would amount to about $700,000 a year that the Ark Encounter would pay to the city. But according to Ham and his organization, they should be exempt from the tax since they're a nonprofit ministry. But the Ark Encounter has been a legally for-profit business in order to receive a number of incentives from the city and state. It's not really a church, it's a money-making tourist attraction, and as such has been eligible for $18 million tax rebate over the next decade.
So I guess nevertheless, Ham and his cohorts came up with an interesting scheme to avoid the tax. Ark Encounters LLC sold its main parcel of land with the life-size Noah's Ark for $10 to their nonprofit affiliate, which is, I guess, is Crosswater Canyon?
Yeah, Crosswater Canyon.
Although the property is worth $48 million, according to the Grant County Property Valuation Administrator, the deed says its value is only $18.5 million. Apparently, fuzzy math.
Yeah, there's a little discrepancy here. We'll get to some math later, too. In that case, on July 10th, the Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet sent Answers in Genesis a letter claiming the deed transfer was in breach of its tourism development agreement and that they may not be eligible then for the state tax incentives that they were promised if the Ark project is owned by a nonprofit legal entity. In other words, now that Ham and his affiliates sold the Ark Encounter for a nonprofit entity, they're no longer eligible for a tax rebate deal.
So, Hemant Mehta, the friendly atheist blogger, put his finger on the situation by noting the creationists running Ark Encounters just cheated themselves out of an $18 million over the next decade because they didn't want to pay a local safety fee worth about $700,000 a year. We already knew the creationists were ignorant about science. Turns out they don't know how to do math either. All right.
Well, they got the message, though, because 3 days after the state tourism officials suspended the $18 million tax incentive, officials at Noah's Ark theme park have sold their main parcel back to their for-profit entity for $10. So I don't know quite what to say about this. A little sleight of foot there, sleight of hand.
Yeah, I guess this happened within the past week or two, right?
Yeah.
So I was vacationing, and when I read about this, and I remember thinking, oh man, I need to, you know, when I get done with all my vacationing, I need to go and make an offer for the Ark and its property for $20 and claim, if the fair market value is $10, I'm doubling your money. I'd like to buy it, and if you're going to say that doubling your money is not a good deal, then apparently you weren't really transferring at fair market value. You were doing something to evade taxes.
Something a little underhand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it that Al Capone went to jail for? Evading taxes.
Yeah. So anyhow, what can we say? It's apparently they're suffering from much lower attendance than they expected. Anyhow.
Well, they've blamed it on us once again,
Yeah.
proving that atheists are stronger than Yahweh.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Did you want to go on to this next piece?
Yeah,
Did you want me
go
to read
ahead.
about this, or you?
Yeah. That's.
All right. A very gratifying piece of news for freethinkers everywhere. A long overdue statue of Clarence Darrow was unveiled on the grounds of the Ray County Courthouse in Dayton, Tennessee on July 14th. This was the site of the famous Scopes trial, the Scopes monkey trial. The $150,000 sculpture by Zenos Frudakis, man, I'm sure I mangled that name, was commissioned by the Freedom from Religion Foundation as a counterpart to the statue of William Jennings Bryant that has been in place since 2007. And I think some of our members were down there.
Yeah.
There were some photographs shared on our Facebook page, our private Facebook page.
Okay.
About
Well,
all
since
that.
I'm not on Facebook, I don't know. But there was in the News Sentinel had a picture of some of our members down there. It's a fairly large picture.
Yeah, and I don't remember whose names were on it
Well,
publicly.
there was a picture of Jennifer Taylor, and I don't know if she's actually a member or not, but she hangs out with us a lot.
And Jennifer is we've never had her on air, but she's called into the show as well. We're not outing her or anything
Okay.
by talking
Yeah.
about her name.
And with Shawnee's back taking a picture of her, so I don't know. Well, anyhow, so let's go on to our main topic, what I call the desperate need to believe. And,
All righty.
And I guess you see what I mean by this once we get into it. That
I'm going to ask what motivated you to come up with the topic and so on, but plunge on in.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you. As a physicist, I deal with making measurements, interpreting data, and with trying to find evidence that justifies or refutes certain hypotheses for how the natural world works. And if I can't find supporting evidence, I don't necessarily say that the hypothesis is false, and I may even concoct explanations to say why the experiments failed to prove it or something. But these explanations also have to be falsifiable. And that is that they don't serve as justifications for asserting the truth of a hypothesis without some justifications. So for me, this approach to science just kind of informs my view about all aspects of life. And that's why I've become increasingly baffled by the unjustified philosophical contortions people adopt to prove that gods exist in the absence of any evidence.
Mm-hmm. Now, and I notice you used the word gods, and viewers can't see, but in your notes here you used lowercase g as well, meaning that you're doing what I do, and that is I don't even make, I never allow the assumption that we only have to consider Yahweh, the Hebrew God, to be the one true God, that the people who are talking about gods had better explain why their particular God is the one that we should consider. That, you know, the ancient Egyptian gods are maybe just as good. I've got the flying spaghetti monster with me today, who's just as good as Yahweh, if not better.
Yeah. What can I say? His noodly appendages are very comforting at times.
Well, the Yeah, but believers will often try and justify their belief based upon, prophecies in their holy book, not realizing their holy book may have been written to have prophecies already fulfilled. In other words, you can't trust the authors, to be honest.
No, of course not.
And of course, the flying spaghetti monsters was revealed to humanity with a similar built-in kind of system where the explanation for climate change was proven to be caused by the decline in pirates, and that the increase in the Earth's temperature correlates with the decline of pirates, and why? Yeah, of course, correlation is causality from their point of view. But it's in a sense it's a built-in self-fulfilling or a built-in prophecy that was fulfilled because it was written after the fact.
Okay. Well, anyhow, you can sort of understand why mankind invented gods, is what you're saying. That at some point in history, people looking for explanations.
There's an interesting thing I read in a book on Greek philosophy where they talked about the emergence or the discovery by the Greeks of the natural world, and that prior to that, people would attribute intentionality in the world, things in the world to intentionality, and they would describe it as, you go to open a door that's got a sticky lock, and it won't work. You got to twist the knob extra hard and jiggle it, and then it opens. And that they were adding or inferring that the door had intended to frustrate our interests, that the door, an inanimate object, had an intentionality to it. And then that can kind of become generalized into all the natural phenomena around us. I guess really primitive humans didn't have doors to go through, but there was lightning in the sky, cold wind, and rain. Those things could be given intentionality.
Yeah. Well, in any case, if you ask the average churchgoer why he believes in gods, you usually get some sort of an answer such as, you can't explain how all this got here, meaning the earth or the universe or whatever. Or you might hear, nature's so beautiful and complex it could not have happened without a designer. Or you might hear that there just has to be some supreme being, because I feel it.
Because I feel it, yeah.
And mostly the average person cannot defend such statements except as gut feelings or personal beliefs. But theologians and philosophers usually feel compelled to put these ideas on a more intellectually accepted basis by concocting so-called proofs of the existence of God.
All righty.
So
the previous slide, though, had a name above it. It says this cosmological argument.
We will get there. That's up there on the background now.
All right.
So I say, let's look at one of these so-called evidentiary proofs, proof based on supposedly natural evidence. And the apologist, William Lane Craig, likes to invoke this cosmological argument. You can find a debate between Craig and Sean Carroll on YouTube where Carroll simply demolishes this argument. And I would recommend anybody who's interested to go to it. Craig sort of goes on like this. I can read it. I don't know if our audience can follow everything up there, but it starts, if the universe began to exist, there is a transcendental cause that brought the universe into existence. Now, transcendental, by transcendental cause, they mean God. I mean, he's a Christian, okay?
I wanted to wrestle with that word instantly as soon as you said it.
And transcendental means this God is not supposed to be confined by space or time in any way. It's also supposed to be ineffable, that is, he's not made of anything material. He is pure spirit.
So if he was here, I would say, Craig, those are naked assertions. You haven't justified a single one of them. Naked assertions.
Naked?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Meaning you should be embarrassed to be wandering about with these things.
Okay. Well, anyhow, a second point is the universe began to exist, and therefore there's a transcendent cause that brought the universe into existence.
All right.
Now, Carol's response is simply yours. He says, a first statement is simply not justified. There's no way you can justify that
Yeah.
in any way at all. It's just thrown out there.
I know you and I have had some discussions maybe a little bit like this in the past, but I kind of wanted to corner you again on this. And that was number 2 here. It says the universe began to exist.
Yeah. This is the this is the argument that Craig thought Carroll was going to attack first. But Carroll didn't. He took the first one and said no justification.
Yeah.
But anyhow, yeah, go ahead with the universe began to exist.
And I want to tackle this by talking about vocabulary. A couple hundred years ago, the word universe and the word galaxy would have been used kind of interchangeably. When we looked out at the night sky, we see the galaxy, all the stars in which we're embedded. But around 100 years ago, it became kind of obvious that it looked like there were galaxies external to our own. And so the word galaxy took on a connotation that is now more local. And it is, so we talk about our galaxy and the other galaxies. And the word galaxy no longer means the whole universe. Ooh.
Oh, we have a phone call.
That's great.
Hello, caller. You've reached Freethought Forum. Can you give us a name or nickname?
It's Charles from Central Illinois.
Hi,
Hello,
Charles.
Charles. Thank you for calling.
Yes, interestingly enough, so I need to believe seems to be today's topic. It's not just religious things. Have you seen the growth of the flat Earth people?
The growth of which people?
Flat Earth.
Oh, flat Earth people.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. I've noticed some of these musings on the web.
Surprisingly enough, yes, Charles. At first I thought that would just be a Poe. Do you know what I mean by a Poe, Charles?
Yes.
Tell the
Yeah,
viewers.
great post. You can't tell if it's somebody being a snarky faker without a winking eye emo or something like that from a truly idiotic person.
Yeah. That I think I can also rephrase it and say that no matter how outrageous the claim, there will be some people who are suckered into believing it, and then there are some people who maybe take some degree of let's say sadistic pleasure in misleading the ignorant on this. So when you're talking to these flat earthers, you can't tell, do they believe it and they're just trying to waste your time and maybe sucker in foolish people or not?
Yeah, I have no idea. I'll tell you, there are enough people who will believe anything that I have to believe there are some of these around.
It's surprising, yes. But Charles, you didn't call to discuss the flat Earth with us, did you?
No, there's it seems as though the religious doctrines and religious peoples are gaining some weight in the Trump administration. According to some reports, the latest communications director for the White House apparently believes that the Earth is only 5,500 years old.
Yeah, he made a statement to that effect in an interview that he had some months earlier, I think, on a certain program.
So, as we would say, a young Earth creationism, and open and unashamed of it at that.
Yeah.
So is Betty DeVos.
Yeah, Betsy, she thinks that the public schools are there to promote God's work. I don't know, even the fellow who heads the CIA, I can't remember his name right now, but I think he's devout Christian. So Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, although he is under some heat now. And so Trump has filled this administration with fundamentalist Christians. There's no doubt about it. And did you see the picture of Trump getting hands laid on from all of these fundamentalist
Oh,
Christians?
yeah.
I think I missed it. I blinked. When did this happen?
But
About 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
a little less maybe, I think. I forget. I've got picture. I'll have to show it to you.
Yeah, I got on the road a couple of weeks ago, went back to visit friends and family in Minnesota, and I guess I've been blissfully unaware of this nonsense.
Well, they had this prayer fest in the Oval Office, I guess it was, and all these people that you read about on TV. This guy Jeffress and Tony Perkins and fellow what runs Liberty University.
Oh man.
They're all in there. There's about a dozen of them, I think, and they're all praying over Trump in the middle there. So he knows where his base comes from.
I bet he loved being the center of that attention.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. One of the things I found interesting is that they had the prophetess Cindy Jones speaking at his inauguration.
No, I didn't latch on to that. I didn't.
It sounds vaguely familiar. This is someone who's like a astrologer kind of prophet.
No,
thing?
she claims to be a healer and a
fake
prophet
healer
of the Lord. One of her more unusual claims is that she cured a woman of her hysterectomy.
Wow. Oh, I hope she's got that documented.
All right.
I'd really like to see that.
Yeah.
Well, Charles, did you have anything more for us at this time?
Not really. I do have a question for you.
All right.
They had the Northern Lights show up, the Aurora Borealis, while you were up visiting family. Did you happen to see them?
No. I was there. I was up in Minnesota, and I did get out and look at the stars. The stars. We were talking about the flat Earth thing. All you got to do is travel a little north and south and notice how the stars rotate to know that we're on a curved body. The Earth curves, and here in Tennessee, the North Star is about 35 degrees above the horizon, and up in northern Minnesota where I was, it's about 45, 46 degrees above the horizon. I've seen it. So I saw that, but no aurora.
I'd like to see how they spot the North Star, say, in Argentina. I'd really like to see the flat earthers explain that.
Yeah, I've not had a chance to corner one of them.
If it's flat Earth, it has two sides. So Argentina may be on the other side.
On the bottom side?
On the bottom
Yeah.
of the plate.
No. I just...
Yeah, there's a few varieties of this flat Earth nonsense. I'm trying to remember where someone had posted an example of some theory where really what they were showing was like a hump in the middle and then it goes concave, and that the sun is orbiting around inside this sort of trough. And that's how they explain day and night as being different on, let's say, here in the United States versus Asia. I mean, they realize that there are places where people live where it's dark and for some people, and it's middle of the day for other people. So they've got a goofy explanation for that, but it doesn't work if you ask even elementary questions such as how high do the stars appear above the horizon and so on.
So, well, you would.
As I recall, that's one of the basic premises that leads to the concept known as heresy, to make people heretics.
Yeah.
Asking questions.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, no
right.
matter
Okay.
which version of this you take, I guess you'd have to characterize it as flatulence.
Okay.
I think
I'll let you go on.
Okay.
Thank you, Charles.
All right.
Well, I wanted to tackle this universe begins.
Well, yeah, that's the second point we can come to down here. Okay.
All right.
Can I just say something about this one, this transcendent cause? Cal's response to, in fact, just not justify. He says it's not even the right language. That he goes to lots of cosmological conferences, and nobody raises the question: is there a transcendent cause? I mean, you find differential equations in quantum mechanics books that are models of how the world works. And he notes that you can build a model where the universe begins to exist, but has no cause, as a matter of fact. This is the Hawking-Hartle model. It was done 30 years ago. It's completely self-contained, and it doesn't need any outside influence. To demand more, he says, is a relic of a pre-scientific society. And that's exactly what religion is. Right? It's a relic of pre-scientific society. So then on the second point that you wanted to tackle there.
So, and that has to do with what do we mean by the universe begins. And a lot of people have heard about the Big Bang Theory, and the Big Bang Theory gets talked about as if it's a beginning of the universe, but I think we can have a better conversation if what we say is that it is a description of the early universe as being very hot and dense, and that there are under serious consideration, models for which there would be something that happens before then. Now, there are also models for which there's nothing before then, and I guess this
Hawking-Hartle model, it just is. The universe just is. It tunnels through from nothing.
And so to say that the universe began, I would then want to say to William Lane Craig, prove that it began. What is your proof that it began?
Well,
it's just an assumption that it had a beginning. Now
that brings up a point. You see, and that is that what Craig does is he uses the science, right? He goes to the science books and say, "Oh, here is a model that the cosmologists say the universe began back a certain time ago,
13.8 billion years ago.
He didn't get that anywhere else, okay? And he does this all the time. What he tries to do is he tries to use scientific results in these debates. And he's a good debater. He's done this 30 or 40 years. And people say he wins most. But when he comes up against the real science, he gets clobbered, like with Carroll or the late Victor Stenger. And so the point I was trying to make there, that he uses his science, and that's how he says the universe began then. He doesn't get it out of the religion.
Well, but if he was here and I asked him this question, it would be, what is the evidence that there was a beginning? And the answer is, I suspect he would have to resort to authority and say, oh, well, the science books say there's a beginning.
Yeah, that's what he just said.
And that's what I was wanting to tackle, and that is to say that I think even this no beginning model has some characteristics about it that I want to describe like this.
Are we seeing the right picture on the screen?
Yeah, well, it looks like there may be an image on top of our image. That if there are previous universes, well, we need to give names to that. We might talk about multiverses, of which ours is now maybe the current universe. Just like we can say a cloud is composed of water droplets in the air that have condensed out, and a cloud is a kind of a thing, and it can come into existence and it can go out of existence, but it doesn't imply that the material out of which it's made didn't exist beforehand. So that I think it's reasonable to say that if someone says that the universe has come into existence, we have to ask the question, what does that even mean, to come into existence? Do you mean that the laws of the universe also came into existence at the same time? Because the Hawking-Hartle model, that strikes me, what little I've heard of these things, is that we can at least say that simultaneous with something like the universe coming into existence must be the rules by which it works.
Yes,
and there's nothing that says that those rules didn't exist before.
No, they can't exist before. There's no way they can exist before. I mean, what are you talking about? If you start talking about what we generally call the fundamental laws of physics, let's say conservation of energy or conservation of momentum, like that. They are properties of the symmetries of space-time. They don't exist without space-time.
is space-time a subset that follows that rule?
No. It's a symmetry contained in the space-time.
But that kind of symmetry is a rule that space-time seems to obey. I don't know how we can say that the universe may not be, let's say, an implementation of something that existed before that rule.
If you don't have any space-time, it doesn't happen. Conservation of momentum means that if you're sitting here, it's what Stanger calls point of view symmetry. If you're sitting here and you see the ball going down there and you measure its momentum, then that's one thing. But I move over here, I translate myself, I measure it go down, I measure the same momentum. It's independent of where I am in
that's
space, and that's the symmetry that comes in.
And that's a product of mathematics,
Yes.
which I think can be proved entirely by logic and does not need an appeal to any observable in the universe. Mathematics, what we say is mathematical truth is merely self-consistency.
It's mathematical truth. It's a theorem proven by a woman named Emmy Noether in 1912. That to every symmetry that you can describe mathematically,
there's a conservation.
There's a conservation law corresponds.
And I think that that is utterly mathematical. That there is no natural observation you need appeal to prove it.
No.
And that's why I would say that it's actually more general than our specific universe. But I've drug us to a big halt. You've got a lot of material here. Why don't we move on?
Well, I think we're probably about ready to have our midterm break here.
We've not done justice to all of your content, but let's dive in. Looks like my name's first. In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most Tuesday from 5 to 5:55 p.m. Eastern on Community Access Television. You can see us streaming online outside the Knoxville area. Just go to ctvcanox.org.
Okay. Well, this is a call-in show, and we're live here on July 25th. And viewers can call in the number on the screen or tweet them to us at FFTVKNOX.
Right.
Well, we have a caller. I think we should take the caller.
We'll do that, yeah.
Hello, caller. You've reached Freethought Forum. Do you have a name or nickname?
Caller is just fine.
Okay, caller.
Thank you for calling us, caller. Your comment or question, please.
Well, I guess two things. One, this Flat Earth Society business. Isn't that kind of a? I always thought that was kind of a joke. You know, like your spaghetti monster thing, sort of. You know, something ridiculous that you can add whatever sort of spurious evidence that you can, you know, that you want to by, you know, like say President Trump does. You know, when you want to try to prove something, it's just to say something totally ridiculous.
You didn't just blaspheme, did you, about the spaghetti monster?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. See, well, there's an example right there. What you know, the spaghetti monster. You use that as a metaphorical vehicle to, you know, ridicule someone who, you know, has religious leanings.
I would call his holy noodliness a rhetorical device, not a metaphorical vehicle. A rhetorical device. But caller.
Rhetorical works for me too. I have no argument there.
All right, but caller, I think I said that you know, when I first heard this flat Earth stuff, I thought it was a Poe. A Poe is someone who is just proposing something preposterous to see how many people he can, you know, fool, either into arguing with him or fool people into following him. The Poe's motivation may be both. And there's a marvelous Wikipedia article on Poe's law that I would suggest you and other viewers go read.
Absolutely not. There's absolutely no way that I'm going to go read, spend any of my precious time on this earth reading about something like the Flat Earth Society. Now,
No.
That's
Poe's
a
law.
ridiculous thing.
Poe's
you should ask
law.
me to do.
It's useful to understand the argument behind Poe's law so that you recognize it when you stumble into these people.
Anyhow, caller, go ahead. Beyond the Flat Earth.
Did you have any more besides that?
Yeah, I did. It seems like you're discussing the beginning of the universe and that sort of thing, and I've been caught Neil deGrasse Tyson on TV a couple of times, and several times he's addressed the idea of God and the universe, and of course he's a scientific person, as I understand it, and he was talking about Newton and some of the other ancestors of science who would explain the natural world as far as they could, as far as their information at that time allowed them to, regarding the movement of planets, stars, or whatever else. And then, after they got as far as they could in their explanation, then they attributed to whatever else was out there as the realm of God, or the workings of God, or that's where God is.
Yeah.
And he made reference to the God of the gaps, and the God is that which is beyond our understanding.
Yes.
And it made, and to hear him speak of it, it made it sound like if you have total understanding, then there is no reason for God. In one case, one scientist was talking about the motions of the planets, and his benefactor said to him something to the effect of, well, where does God fit in all of this? And I think it was Newton or someone said, well, I had no reason to interject God into that.
He said he had no reason for that hypothesis.
Hypothesis was the word he used. I didn't know if that would have been...
Which scientist was that?
I want to say Laplace, but I'm not sure. He was talking to Napoleon.
Right.
And he presented him with one of these orreries where the planets go around the Earth, sun, yeah, that's quite true.
So it seems like Neil deGrasse Tyson has a slightly different attitude about it, in that you seem to be saying that an atheist has seen no evidence for God, whereas deGrasse Tyson was explaining about how these great scientists through the years come at it from a slightly different angle, in that, well, if there's a God, he's out there.
No, yeah, let's just take one simple example, okay? Isaac Newton is well known for developing the law of universal gravitation, right? Calculating planetary orbits. You can take this, you do it in general physics class probably these days. You take two planets, you calculate the orbit. But when you put several planets in there, they interact with one another. And so it's not such an easy calculation, because you have all these other planets interacting. And Newton couldn't solve that problem. And he thought it was an unstable situation, and that it required God to periodically step in and make corrections.
Really? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. As a matter of fact, I did not remember it that way.
Yes, and but later on, when people like Lagrange developed the mathematics and the perturbation theory further, they showed that that could be a stable situation. You didn't need any external type of supernatural force. So that's the way science progresses, okay? And so there's always the God of the gaps out there for the people who want to believe. But he's kind of gotten whittled down a good bit over the years.
God's job has gotten significantly smaller, let's say. He doesn't shepherd planets around. He's got more and more time off as science has demonstrated what he's not doing. But, caller, There's an aspect of what Newton and other scientists of the 15 and 1600s were doing, a perspective I'd like to leave you with, and that is that they believed in a God, and in the case of Newton it would be the Christian God, and they felt that they were understanding that God better by looking at the natural world. There's a marvelous phrase, I think it is by Thomas Paine, who spoke about reading the book of nature. I'm badly paraphrasing here.
Now, Thomas Paine being, what was he?
The well-known deist.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
deist. All right.
Yeah. So Thomas Paine speaks about reading the book of nature, which we can be sure that no human being has falsified. We can't be sure about any of the written books, but when we look out at a mountain, we know that no human ever built that mountain and therefore made a false record.
Uh-huh.
And so the great scientists of the 15, 16, 1700s, they often came at it from the point of view that they were going to read God's mind by further reading in the book of nature.
Right.
And sometimes the result is that they felt that it was incompatible with what was written in the Hebrew and the Christian Bible.
Uh-huh.
Now, many of them would find a way not to. Newton never gave up on Christianity. In fact, he apparently wasted a bunch of his life, trying to prove things about the date of the second coming of Christ, and he placed it, I guess, in the 21st century.
Okay.
So if he's right, maybe Christ is about to come.
So earlier you mentioned, I see where you're going with it. I believe you're saying something like that nature is the shadow of God to some of these people. But you mentioned earlier about the primitive people seeing the lightning and attributing that to God.
Intentionality is the word I use.
Excuse me?
Intentionality is the word I
okay,
use.
intentionality. For everything there's a reason.
As if there was actually like a living force within maybe the door that resisted you. That is different than an all-encompassing one God. The intentionality was that the doorknob had it in for you. The doorknob was maliciously thwarting your purpose.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Every now and then I get out of my bed and this damn bedpost intentionally stubs my toe, and I must curse at it, and I realize that at the time that I do that...
But let us not curse on the
level.
TV now. All right. Let us not curse on the TV.
I did not. Did
All right. I'm just preventing you from going there. But yes, those doorposts and bedposts can be malicious.
Yes, and okay, thank you for keeping me from doing an FCC sin.
There we go.
But so what you're saying is when these ancient people were looking at lightning and all of that, you're basically saying that the ancient people probably could not have been atheists.
I think the argument of the book that I read was that this was a plausibility argument for how people began to not react purely reflexively to the world around them, but to build something that ultimately then becomes more formalized in religion. When I watch my cat interact with a door, some of my cats have been able to figure out how to open a door that's just ajar. They can hook a paw around it. Others will try to nuzzle in with their nose and it'll just get tighter. So some cats can open a door, some cats cannot. So there's a different amount of cognitive ability. Some cats have figured out that the door has a rule that it can work by, and they can accommodate that. I think that's like the beginning of understanding and attributing, beginning of understanding the world around us. Some of that is going to include these imaginary entities.
Well, I think what happened was, if we take the view of the evolution of hominids, up to modern man, at some point along that journey, people became aware of cause and effect, and that is that they were not totally subject to the forces of nature. They could go out and kill animals and skin them, make their own clothes so to wear, or maybe build huts along points instead of just living in caves. And once they became aware of cause and effect, then they looked at these natural phenomena and tried to assign cause to those effects. And
Yeah, but
I
what I was
think because
getting
the
at-
early gods are gods of nature.
What I was getting at, though, is with these past scientists that have had these incredible insights and incredible education and perseverance to push God back, if you will. I'm getting a little echo here, but it seems like we are now living in an age where we can become so confident in our intelligence that we can dismiss God entirely.
We can rule out many kinds of gods.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think we can say that the ancient Aztec god that required someone's heart to be cut out on the top of their temple, if not every day, every week or something like that, or the sun wouldn't rise, I think we can rule that god out because, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure the tourists would report on it. If someone's heart was being cut out on the top of that temple now and then, we'd know about it. So that has stopped. The sun still rises. That god is false. Are you willing to go with me on that, caller?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I believe that Newton would agree with excuse me.
Yeah. And
I believe that Newton would agree with you, too.
and I can
in
also
that some
say
of the gods have been dismissed.
Now, I would also say that the only other God we really need to bother talking about is the Hebrew God, because it's the only one that people are trying to inject into our civic lives.
Well, yes and no. I mean, that's the one that dominates the current Christian society we have. But if we had another 2 or 3 hours here, we could get to the point where the philosophers or the theologians, they don't talk about Yahweh or any God by name. They talk about a transcendental being.
They're deliberately vague.
Yes, they're deliberately vague in that sense, that their God has no name.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that what we were going to try to talk about here was these desperate attempts to find, some kind of reason to believe in a God of this sort.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I should be getting off here and allow one of your other viewers to call in. However, what you said earlier about our president during his campaign was also having hands laid on him because his ministers were telling him he was being attacked by satanic forces, which I thought was the Democrats. But when it comes to our president involving himself in such behavior, that is a scary thing.
It's very scary. And
non-reality based.
He just now wants to appoint somebody as a federal judge in Minnesota who thinks biblical law should take precedence over civil law.
Yeah.
Well, considering his appointment so far, if he was appointing a person of a religious nature, my blood runs cold at the thought of who he might pick.
Yeah, this is somebody who's on the faculty at Notre Dame, I think.
All right. Well, caller, quick, tell us, are you local and have you watched before, even though I think I know the answer?
Yes. I think you probably know who I am since you were so concerned about me.
Keep moving. Are you local and have you watched before?
Yes.
All righty. Well, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All
Okay,
righty.
well, we probably missed our break there.
I think we can jump across that, and what we maybe want to do you have anything written up about the upcoming book of the month?
No,
All right.
I don't really, but we just have to remind people that this program is sponsored by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Okay, so I think we have a few more comments here, and then we'll have to go to the closing.
Yeah, all right. Let's go back into your material you worked so hard on.
I kind of lost. Oh, yes. Okay.
I was attacking the second point there.
Yeah, we're talking about, did the universe begin to exist? And it's not necessarily. And there are different models. And this is the point that Carol makes, and that Hawking and Mlodinow made in their book, The Elegant. What did they call it? Okay, senior moment, right?
Yeah,
right
you'll remember it once.
I call it the grand design, I think.
Okay.
And that is, we make models of how we believe the universe works, okay? And their point is that any model that explains all the observable phenomena is as good as any other model. And so that's the point that Carol makes about, say, the origins of the universe or things like that. That we make models to explain it. We try to make the best model. We may have to abandon. He thinks we're nowhere near the real basic model for how the universe came into existence, etc. He has his own model that he makes up, and it's a model where there's an eternally existing universe, what he calls what is called a de Sitter space. It's an empty universe, but it has a positive cosmological constant. And he has a model where these sort of baby universes sort of break off. And he comes
nucleate.
Yeah, in a way. And he comes to this, he worked on a student with it, by asking the question, why was the entropy of the early universe so low? Because one thing everybody seems to believe is that entropy always increases, okay? And so that means that you had to start at a very small value early in the beginning.
Well, at least lower than the current entropy of the universe.
Much lower, much lower, because we've had a lot of...
there's been a lot of change since.
A lot of change since. And so anyhow, Craig tries to attack him on this point, saying his model doesn't conserve information. And Carol said, you're just wrong. It does conserve information. I'm the one that did it. And he spends a lot of time in his book going through this. And in summary, Craig's case to try to build this argument for God on the basis of this column cosmological argument simply falls flat on his face when he has to debate with a physicist who actually studies cosmology rather than pontificating about it. So this is true of all evidentiary arguments, such as various God of the Gaps discussions or intelligent designs. The people who actually work in these areas will pretty much kill off the apologists for this. And so we were then going to go on to discuss some of the non-evidentiary arguments for the existence of God.
But we're out of time.
But we are out of time.
So we'll have to do this on another show.
So only about 1 minute to go. So it's time to start wrapping things up. Why don't you get out your pen and paper?
This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Please send us feedback. You can leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see this show most Tuesdays from 5 to 5:55 p.m. On this Knoxville station, cable station, or ctvknox.org for your out-of-town friends.
Right. So we want to give our thanks here to Riv Matsu and Leah Rollins for technical help, and to the staff at CTV KNOX, and to all of our callers.
Thanks.